The Spiritual Path of Tai Chi, Energy Flow, and the Art of Moving Meditation, by David Rousseau. The stillness within motion. What if true strength did not come from force, but from flow? What if the greatest power you could cultivate was not in striking, but in sensing? In a world that rewards speed, tension, and control, Tai Chi offers something radically different: softness that overcomes hardness, patience that outlasts urgency, and awareness that transforms movement into meditation. This is not just an art of the body, it is an art of energy, of listening, and of becoming still while in motion. Introduction: the quiet flow within. There is a kind of power that does not announce itself. It does not arrive with speed or force, nor does it seek to dominate or overwhelm. Instead, it moves quietly, like water finding its path, like breath rising and falling without effort. This is the power at the heart of Tai Chi, a subtle, steady presence that reveals itself only when we slow down enough to feel it. As a martial arts and spiritual practitioner, I have experienced Tai Chi not as something to master, but as something to enter, an unfolding process of awareness, connection, and inner stillness. At first glance, the movements seem simple, slow, even effortless, but within that simplicity lies a depth that cannot be rushed or forced. I remember standing in practice, raising my arms and legs into a cross stance, moving with deliberate care. There was something familiar in the motion. It echoed patterns I had learned in Kung Fu: the positioning, the structure, the coordination of hand and leg. Yet Tai Chi approached it differently. Where other arts emphasized speed or power, Tai Chi revealed the space between movements, the flow that connects one action to the next. It was in that space that I began to understand. Another moment stands out clearly: practicing push hands. At first, it felt like a test of reaction, a subtle contest of balance. But as I continued, something shifted. Instead of trying to control the outcome, I began to listen. Through the contact of the hands, I could feel the intention of my partner, the direction of their movement, the subtle shifts in their weight, the quiet signals of where they were going before they arrived. There was a rhythm to it, a back and forth, a conversation without words. In those moments, I realized that Tai Chi was teaching something far beyond physical technique. It was showing me how to sense rather than force, how to remain centered while everything else moved. With a small adjustment, a gentle redirection, I could guide my partner off balance, not through strength, but through awareness. It reminded me of communication in everyday life. When we truly listen without resistance, without the need to dominate, we begin to understand. And from that understanding, the right response arises naturally. My grandmother once told me, "Take one external art and one internal art together. They complete the martial artist." At the time, I understood this as a balance of physical skill. But through Tai Chi, I came to see it as something deeper. External arts train the body to act. Internal arts train the mind and spirit to align. Together, they create harmony. There was even a moment when this understanding moved beyond practice. In a real situation, when someone was in danger, I found myself responding not with tension or aggression, but with calm awareness. Drawing on Tai Chi alongside my other training, I was able to act with timing, balance, and clarity to protect without unnecessary force. In that moment, the principles of flow and centeredness were not abstract ideas, they were real, immediate, and effective. Tai Chi has also taught me humility in unexpected ways. Some of the most skilled practitioners I have encountered did not look like masters in the traditional sense. One of my instructors was a chef in a restaurant, another was a plumber. Their wisdom was not displayed, it was embodied. They moved with quiet confidence, with presence rather than show. It reminded me that true understanding does not seek recognition. It simply is. This audiobook is not a guide to mastering forms or memorizing movements. It is an invitation to explore the inner path of Tai Chi, the flow of energy, the cultivation of patience, and the practice of mindfulness in motion. It is about discovering how softness can hold strength, how stillness can exist within movement, and how awareness can transform even the simplest action into something meaningful. Tai Chi begins with movement, but it leads to something deeper, a way of being, a way of listening, a way of flowing through life with clarity, balance, and quiet strength. And like the practice itself, it begins with a single, simple step becoming present in this moment, and allowing everything else to unfold from there. Chapter 1. The Flow of Energy. There is a current that runs through all things quiet, steady, and often unnoticed. In Tai Chi, this current is referred to as energy, or Qi. It is not something mystical or distant, but something immediate and alive within us. It is present in the breath, in the shifting of weight from one foot to the other, in the extension of the arms and the settling of the body into stillness. It is the subtle connection between intention and movement. At first, I did not fully understand it. Like many practitioners, I approached training through structure learning positions, refining technique, focusing on where the hands and feet should be. But over time, something began to change. The movements became less mechanical and more connected. Instead of thinking about each part separately, I began to feel how everything moved together. It was during push hands that this awareness truly began to awaken. Standing face to face with a partner, hands slightly connected, there is no room for distraction. Every shift in pressure, every subtle change in direction, becomes noticeable. At first, I reacted. I tried to anticipate, to respond quickly, to maintain control. But the more I tried to control, the more I lost the connection. Then, gradually, I began to listen instead. Through that contact, I could feel where my partner's energy was going, not just the physical movement, but the intention behind it. There was a moment, small but clear, when everything aligned. I wasn't thinking about what to do next. I was simply aware. In that awareness, the response came naturally, a slight redirection, a gentle yielding, and suddenly, their balance shifted while I remained centered. That was the first time I truly felt the flow of energy, not as an idea, but as an experience. Tai Chi teaches that energy flows where attention goes. When the mind is scattered, the body becomes disconnected. Movements feel forced, heavy, and uncoordinated. But when the mind settles, when awareness is present, the body begins to move as a whole. There is no separation between intention and action. Breath becomes an anchor in this process. Each inhale creates expansion, each exhale allows release. When movement is guided by breath, it becomes fluid rather than rigid. The body softens, and in that softness, energy can move freely. This is one of the paradoxes of Tai Chi. The less we force, the more effective we become. I have experienced this not only in practice, but in moments beyond it. There was a time when I needed to act quickly to protect someone in danger. In that situation, there was no time to think through techniques or strategies, but the principles of Tai Chi were there: awareness, balance, timing. Instead of meeting force with force, I responded by sensing the movement, adjusting, and redirecting. The action was simple, but it was guided by something deeper than reaction. It was guided by presence. Energy flow is not about doing more, it is about doing less with greater awareness. It is about removing what is unnecessary, tension, hesitation, resistance. What remains is clarity. Movement becomes efficient, natural, and precise. Over time, you begin to notice this flow in everyday life. In conversations, you sense when to speak and when to listen. In challenges, you recognize when to act and when to step back. There is a rhythm to everything, a current beneath the surface. Tai Chi trains us to feel that current, to trust it, to move with it rather than against it. And in doing so, we discover that energy is not something we need to create, it is something we learn to allow. It has always been there, quietly flowing, waiting for us to become still enough to notice, and aware enough to follow. Chapter 2. Slowness as Strength. In a world that moves quickly, slowness can feel unnatural. We are taught to react, to produce, to keep up. Speed is often mistaken for skill, and urgency for importance. But Tai Chi offers a different perspective, one that challenges this way of thinking at its core. In Tai Chi, we slow down, not as a limitation, but as a discipline. At first, this can be uncomfortable. When I began practicing the forms at a slower pace, I noticed things I had never seen before: small imbalances, unnecessary tension, moments where my mind would wander ahead of my body. There was no hiding in slowness. Each movement became a mirror. The way I shifted my weight, the way I held my shoulders, the way my breath either supported or resisted the motion, it was all revealed. What once felt smooth at a faster pace now showed its rough edges. And that is where the learning began. Slowness creates space. Space to observe. Space to adjust. Space to become aware. I remember practicing a sequence that included a transition into a cross stance. It was a movement I recognized from my kung fu training, where it was often performed with speed and precision. But in Tai Chi, the same movement unfolded differently. As I slowed it down, I could feel every part of the transition, the grounding of the foot, the shifting of balance, the coordination between upper and lower body. It was no longer just a technique. It became an experience. The movement taught me something I had missed before. Strength is not just in the execution, but in the control between moments. In that control, there is power. Slowness also cultivates patience, and patience is not something that can be rushed. It develops gradually, through repetition and awareness. There were times when I felt the urge to speed up, to move past the discomfort, to reach the end of the form more quickly. But Tai Chi does not reward impatience. It invites you to stay, to remain present in each moment, even when it feels repetitive, even when progress seems invisible. Over time, something shifts. The frustration fades. The need to rush begins to dissolve. In its place, there is a quiet focus, a steady attention that allows each movement to unfold naturally. You begin to trust the process. This patience extends beyond practice. It changes the way you approach challenges, the way you respond to others, the way you move through your day. You realize that not everything needs to happen immediately. Some things require time, attention, and care. Like the steady flow of water shaping stone, slow and consistent effort creates lasting transformation. There is also a deeper layer to slowness, a connection to awareness itself. When we move quickly, we often act without fully noticing. But when we slow down, we begin to see more clearly. We notice the breath. We notice the body. We notice the subtle shifts in energy. In this awareness, movement becomes more than physical. It becomes meditative. I have felt moments during practice where time seemed to expand. Each motion was deliberate, yet effortless. The mind was quiet, the body relaxed, and everything moved in harmony. There was no sense of rushing, no sense of lagging, only presence. These moments are not forced. They arise naturally when we allow ourselves to slow down fully. Slowness, in this way, is not the absence of speed, it is the refinement of it. It is where precision is developed, where awareness is sharpened, and where true control is cultivated. And perhaps most importantly, it is where we learn to be, not ahead of ourselves, not behind, but fully here, in the unfolding of each moment. Through Tai Chi, slowness becomes more than a method of practice. It becomes a way of living with patience, with clarity, and with a quiet, enduring strength that does not need to rush to prove itself. Chapter 3. Push Hands. The Dialogue of Energy. There is a conversation that happens without words. In Tai Chi, this conversation takes place through touch, through movement, through awareness. It is most clearly experienced in the practice of push hands, a partner exercise that, on the surface, appears simple, yet reveals profound truths about energy, balance, and the self. When I first practiced push hands, I approached it like many do, with the mindset of reacting. My focus was on what to do next, how to respond, how to maintain control. It felt, at times, like a subtle contest who could unbalance the other first. But the more I tried to win, the more disconnected I became. Push hands does not reward force or anticipation. It invites something else entirely. Listening, standing with a partner, hands lightly touching. There is an immediate exchange of information. Every shift in pressure, every movement forward or back, carries intention. At first, these signals can feel overwhelming or unclear. The instinct is to respond quickly, to assert control. But Tai Chi teaches us to pause, not physically, but internally, to feel before reacting. I remember a moment when this began to change for me. Instead of trying to push or resist, I softened my approach. I paid attention to the contact point, to the subtle movement of my partner's arms, to the shifting of their weight beneath the surface. Something became clear. I could sense where they were going before they fully committed to it. There was a rhythm, like a tide moving in and out. When they pressed forward, I yielded slightly. When they withdrew, I followed. There was no abruptness, No clash, just continuous motion. And within that motion, an opening appeared. It was not forced. It revealed itself. With a small adjustment, a gentle redirection, I guided their energy just enough to disrupt their balance. They stepped, and I remained centered. That moment changed my understanding of push hands. It was no longer about pushing. It was about connecting. Push hands teaches us that energy is always communicating. The question is whether we are aware enough to receive it. When we are tense, distracted, or focused only on ourselves, we miss the conversation entirely. But when we relax and become present, we begin to understand. This understanding is not intellectual, it is felt. You feel the direction of movement. You feel the intention behind it. You feel the moment when balance is lost or regained. And perhaps most importantly, you feel your own state. Push hands becomes a mirror. If you are impatient, it shows. If you are rigid, it becomes obvious. If your mind is scattered, your movements reflect it. But when you are calm, centered, and aware, something shifts. The interaction becomes smoother. The effort decreases. The connection deepens. I found that the lessons of push hands extended far beyond the practice itself. In communication with others, I began to notice similar patterns. When I resisted too strongly, conversations became tense. When I truly listened, there was space for understanding. Like in push hands, I didn't need to overpower. I needed to be aware, to feel what was being expressed beneath the surface, to respond rather than react. Push hands also teaches trust in the process, in your sensitivity, in your ability to adapt. You learn that you do not need to control every moment. Sometimes, the most effective action is to follow, to allow, and then to gently guide. There is humility in this practice. No matter how much experience you have, each partner is different. Each interaction is new. You cannot rely on habit alone. You must remain present. And in that presence, something deeper emerges, a quiet clarity, a sense of connection that goes beyond physical movement. Push hands becomes more than a drill. It becomes a dialogue between two people, between intention and response, between self and awareness. Through this dialogue, we begin to understand that life itself moves in a similar way. There are moments to yield, moments to follow, moments to guide. And when we learn to listen, to truly listen, we discover that we do not need to force our way through. We can move with the flow. We can remain centered, and from that center, respond with clarity, balance, and quiet strength. Chapter 4, Rooting, Staying Centered. Before we can move freely, we must first learn how to stand. In Tai Chi, this is the principle of rooting, the ability to remain grounded, stable, and connected, even as everything around us shifts. It is not stiffness or rigidity, but a quiet, steady presence that begins at the feet and rises through the entire body. At first, rooting seems purely physical. You focus on your stance, your balance, the way your weight settles into the ground. You are taught to relax the knees, align the spine, and allow the body to sink naturally rather than forcefully. But over time, you begin to realize that rooting is something deeper. It is not just where your feet are, it is where your mind is. I remember during push hands, there were moments when I lost my balance, not because my stance was wrong, but because my attention shifted. A sudden thought, a reaction, a moment of impatience, and my center was gone. It happened quickly, almost invisibly, and yet, the effect was immediate. My partner did not need to use force. The imbalance was already there. That was when I began to understand. Rooting is as much internal as it is external. To be rooted means to remain present, to stay connected to yourself, even when something unexpected happens. In Tai Chi, this is tested constantly. Your partner moves, applies pressure, changes direction, and your ability to stay centered is challenged again and again. The instinct is often to resist, to tense up, to try to hold your ground through effort. But this creates the opposite effect. Tension disconnects you from the ground. It lifts you out of your center. True rooting comes from relaxation. When the body softens, weight can settle naturally. When the mind quiets, awareness deepens. From this state, stability emerges without strain. I have felt this shift during practice. There are moments when everything aligns, the feet connect firmly to the ground, the spine feels upright yet relaxed, and the breath moves steadily. In those moments, there is a sense of being anchored, not stuck, but supported. From that foundation, movement becomes effortless. You can step, turn, or shift without losing balance. You can receive force without being overwhelmed by it. You are not resisting, you are absorbing, redirecting, and returning to center. This principle extends far beyond physical training. In life, we are constantly pushed and pulled by stress, by emotions, by the actions of others. It is easy to lose our center in these moments, a strong reaction, a moment of frustration, a sudden challenge, and we feel unsteady. But Tai Chi teaches us to return, to find that internal ground, to pause, breathe, and reconnect. Rooting in this sense is emotional and mental stability. It is the ability to remain calm under pressure, to respond rather than react, to stay aligned with your values even when circumstances shift around you. I have seen how this awareness changes interactions. Just as in push hands, when you remain centered, others feel it. There is less conflict, less resistance. Your presence becomes steady, and that steadiness influences the space around you. Rooting does not mean you cannot be moved. It means you are not easily shaken. You can adapt without losing yourself. You can respond without becoming reactive. You can move with change while staying connected to your core. There is also humility in rooting. No matter how grounded you feel, there will always be moments when you lose your balance. Tai Chi does not expect perfection, it invites awareness. Each time you lose your center, you are given an opportunity to find it again. And in that returning, you grow stronger. Over time, rooting becomes less of a technique and more of a way of being. You carry it with you into conversations, into challenges, into everyday moments that once felt unstable. You begin to trust that no matter what arises, you can come back to yourself, back to the breath, back to the body, back to the quiet, steady ground within. And from that place, you move not with force, but with balance, clarity, and a calm strength that begins at the root and extends into everything you do. Chapter 5. The Form. Meditation in Motion. There is a rhythm in Tai Chi that cannot be rushed. It unfolds slowly, one movement flowing into the next, like a quiet stream that never breaks. This is the form, a sequence of postures practiced not just to remember, but to experience. To an outside observer, it may appear as a series of graceful motions, but to the practitioner, it becomes something deeper, a moving meditation. When I first began practicing Tai Chi forms, my focus was on getting the movements right. Where does the hand go? How should the foot turn? What comes next? Like learning any new skill, there was a structure to follow, and I approached it with concentration and effort. But over time, that approach began to change. I remember practicing a movement that raised the arms into a cross stance. It felt familiar, something I had encountered in my kung fu training. The positioning, the coordination, the transition of weight, it was all there. But in Tai Chi, the movement was not just executed, it was felt. Instead of moving from point to point, I began to notice what happened in between. The shift of weight before the step, the subtle rotation of the hips guiding the upper body, the breath expanding as the arms rose, then softening as they settled. The form was no longer a sequence, it became a continuous flow. This is where Tai Chi reveals one of its most important teachings. The space between movements is just as important as the movements themselves. In that space, awareness lives. At first, the mind wants to rush ahead to think about the next posture, to anticipate what comes next. But when you allow the mind to settle into the present movement, something shifts. The transitions become smoother. The body relaxes. The form begins to feel less like something you are doing and more like something you are part of. There have been moments in practice where this awareness deepened. The movements became effortless, the breath steady, the mind quiet. There was no separation between thought and action, only a continuous unfolding. In those moments, the form becomes meditation, not stillness in the traditional sense, but stillness within motion. Each posture becomes an opportunity to return to the present. Each transition becomes a chance to refine awareness. There is no need to rush, no need to force. The practice itself becomes enough. This is one of the subtle challenges of the form. Because it is repetitive, the mind can drift. It can become mechanical, going through the motions without presence. But Tai Chi gently brings you back. If your attention wanders, the movement loses its quality, the connection fades, and so, you return again, to the breath, to the body, to the flow. I have found that this returning is where much of the growth happens, not in performing the form perfectly, but in noticing when I am no longer present and choosing to come back. Over time, the form begins to influence more than just practice. The same awareness carries into everyday life. Simple actions, walking, reaching, turning, begin to feel more connected. There is less tension, less urgency, more presence. The form also becomes a bridge between internal and external understanding. Through my experience in other martial arts, I recognized familiar techniques within the movements, but Tai Chi changed how I related to them. It emphasized continuity over interruption, softness over force, awareness over reaction. It did not replace what I had learned, it refined it. The more I practiced, the more I realized that the form is not something to be completed. There is no final version, no perfect execution. It evolves with you. Each day, each practice reveals something new, a deeper relaxation, a clearer connection, a quieter mind. In this way, the form becomes a lifelong companion. It teaches patience, because it cannot be rushed. It teaches awareness, because it cannot be done unconsciously. And it teaches presence, because it only exists in the moment it is practiced. Through the form, we begin to understand that meditation is not limited to stillness. It can be found in movement, in breath, in the continuous flow of attention. And as the body moves, the mind settles. As the movements connect, so do we to ourselves, to the present, and to the quiet rhythm that has been there all along, waiting to be noticed. Chapter 6. Softness overcomes hardness. It is natural to believe that strength comes from force. From a young age, we are taught to meet resistance with resistance, to push back when pushed, to stand firm through effort and intensity. In many martial arts, this approach has its place, but Tai Chi offers a different understanding, one that seems counterintuitive at first, yet proves itself again and again through practice. Softness, it teaches, is not weakness, it is awareness in action. When I first began applying this principle, it challenged everything I was used to. In push hands, my instinct was to meet pressure directly. If my partner pushed, I pushed back. If they applied force, I resisted. It felt natural, even logical, but it rarely worked. The more I resisted, the more tension I created. The more tension I created, the easier it became for my partner to disrupt my balance. I was strong, but not stable, active, but not aware. Then came the shift. Instead of resisting, I began to yield just slightly, not collapsing, not retreating, but softening enough to feel the direction of the force. I allowed the pressure to pass through rather than stop against me. At first, it felt unfamiliar, almost like giving in, but something unexpected happened. By not opposing the force directly, I stayed connected to it. I could feel where it was going, how it was building, and where it would eventually weaken. In that awareness, I found opportunity, a small redirection, a subtle turn, a gentle return of energy, and suddenly, what felt like strength from my partner became imbalance, not because I overpowered it, but because I understood it. This is the essence of softness overcoming hardness. It is not about avoiding strength, but about transforming it. Instead of clashing, you connect. Instead of stopping, you guide. Softness allows you to remain adaptable. It keeps the body relaxed, the mind open, and the awareness clear. From that state, you are able to respond rather than react. I have seen how this principle extends far beyond physical practice. In moments of conflict, whether in conversation or in life, meeting force with force often leads to escalation. Words become sharper, emotions rise, balance is lost on both sides. But when you bring softness, when you listen, when you pause, when you choose not to react immediately, the dynamic changes. You begin to understand the intention behind the words, the energy behind the emotion, and from that understanding, a different response becomes possible. This does not mean becoming passive or allowing yourself to be overwhelmed. Just as in Tai Chi, softness is supported by structure. There is still grounding, still awareness, still clarity of intention. You are not giving up your center, you are protecting it. There was a moment in my own experience where this principle became very real. In a situation where someone was in danger, I had to act. The instinct could have been to meet aggression with direct force, but instead, I relied on what I had learned, remaining calm, sensing movement, and responding with precision. By not clashing directly, I was able to redirect the situation and create space enough to protect without escalating further. In that moment, softness was not passive, it was effective. Tai Chi teaches us that hardness has limits. It relies on strength, and strength can be matched or exceeded. But softness is adaptable. It changes, flows, and finds openings where rigidity cannot. Water is often used as a metaphor for this principle. It yields to everything, yet over time, it shapes even the hardest stone. It does not resist, yet it is never truly stopped. In practice, developing softness requires patience. It asks us to let go of the need to dominate, to release unnecessary tension, and to trust in awareness rather than force. This is not always easy. There are moments when the instinct to resist is strong, moments when tension feels like control. But with continued practice, you begin to recognize that true control comes from balance, not force. Softness becomes a strength that is quiet but powerful, a strength that listens before acting, a strength that adapts rather than resists, a strength that remains centered, even when challenged. Through Tai Chi, we learn that we do not always need to push harder to move forward. Sometimes, the more effective path is to soften, to feel, and to flow. And in that flow, we discover a strength that does not need to prove itself because it is already complete. Chapter 7. Mindfulness in Motion. Tai Chi is not just a series of movements, it is mindfulness made visible. Every posture, every step, every shift of weight becomes a practice in presence. The form, the transitions, even the seemingly simple act of standing, is an invitation to bring attention fully into the body, the breath, and the moment. When I first began practicing Tai Chi, I noticed how easy it was for the mind to wander. I would think ahead to the next posture, worrying about whether I was performing correctly, or reflect on events outside the dojo. My body moved, but my mind was elsewhere. Over time, however, I realized that the deeper lessons of Tai Chi emerge only when the mind and body move together. Presence is not an accessory to movement, it is the movement itself. Push hands is where this becomes strikingly clear. In that subtle, responsive practice, awareness must extend beyond oneself. You cannot be fully present if your attention is scattered. Every pressure, every shift, every weight transfer carries information. At first, I reacted instinctively, trying to counterbalance or anticipate, but the results were inconsistent. Then I began to slow down not just the body, but the mind. I began to listen with my hands and body before acting. In that stillness, clarity arose. I could sense my partner's movement before it fully manifested. I could respond with calmness rather than tension, with flow rather than force. This mindfulness is not confined to the mat. I noticed it in daily life as well, in conversation, in traffic, in moments of stress. The same principle applies. Awareness before reaction, presence before impulse. The lessons of Tai Chi carry into every interaction. Just as in push hands, if you approach life reactively, you meet resistance and instability. If you approach it with mindfulness, your movements, both literal and metaphorical, become deliberate, balanced, and harmonious. I remember a particular training session where I was practicing a sequence of forms with slow, deliberate motion. As I moved, I became aware of the subtle tensions in my body: tight shoulders, uneven weight distribution, shallow breathing. By observing without judgment and adjusting consciously, each movement became smoother, lighter, more connected. My mind calmed, my body aligned, and the entire practice became meditative. The form ceased to be something I was performing and became something I was living. Tai Chi teaches that mindfulness is not about trying harder to be aware. It is about creating conditions for presence to arise naturally. Through breath, posture, and flowing movement, the mind quiets and energy aligns. In that alignment, every action becomes purposeful and effortless. This chapter is about cultivating that presence, not as a goal to achieve, but as a way of engaging with life, one movement, one breath, one moment at a time. Tai Chi shows us that mindfulness is not separate from action. It is action itself, infused with awareness, clarity, and calm. Through continued practice, the distinction between meditation and motion dissolves. Being present becomes second nature. Life itself becomes a flowing form, and in each step, in each gesture, the quiet, centered energy of Tai Chi the Che guides us. Here, in the stillness within motion, we discover a truth that extends beyond the art. When we are fully present, we are uncheckable, responsive, and aligned with the flow of life itself. Chapter 8. Patience and the Unfolding of Time. One of the most profound lessons Tai Chi teaches is patience, not as an abstract virtue, but as a lived experience. In a world that prizes speed and instant results, slowing down can feel uncomfortable, even frustrating, but Tai Chi shows that growth, awareness, and mastery cannot be rushed. They unfold in their own time, like a seed quietly pushing through the soil toward the sun. I remember my early days with the forms. Movements that seemed simple on paper took weeks, even months, to feel natural. My mind wanted progress, results, visible improvement. I grew impatient, yet the more I tried to rush, the more disconnected I became. The forms felt forced, stiff, and heavy. The energy of Che I was seeking seemed elusive. Then I began to embrace patience as part of the practice itself. Rather than seeing repetition as a chore, I approached it as a teacher. Each movement, each posture, each transition carried subtle lessons that only revealed themselves when I slowed down and observed carefully. I noticed the alignment of my spine, the grounding of my feet, the rhythm of my breath. I noticed the tiny spaces between movements, where energy flows naturally and effortlessly. Push hands offered another lesson in patience. In moments of contact with a partner, force is applied and resisted, pressure shifts and releases, and the mind wants to respond immediately. Early on, I often acted too quickly, anticipating movement rather than feeling it. But when I allowed myself to wait, to truly sense the energy before moving, the interaction transformed. Subtle openings became apparent. What once required brute effort now unfolded effortlessly, guided by awareness rather than reaction. Patience in Tai Chi is not passive. It is active, present, and deeply attentive. It is the understanding that each moment matters, and that mastery comes from honoring the process rather than forcing the outcome. My grandmother often reminded me, one external art and one internal art complete the journey, but only if you are willing to let each moment teach you. I realized that this principle applies to life itself. Life, like Tai Chi, cannot be hurried. Relationships, growth, understanding, and even healing require time. The impatience we carry only creates tension, blocks energy, and disconnects us from the present. But when we practice patience, when we allow ourselves to move deliberately, breathe fully, and observe closely, life begins to unfold naturally. Opportunities become clear, connections deepen, and our energy moves freely. I have seen this principle at work beyond the dojo. Once, in a situation where someone's life was at risk, immediate action was necessary, but the clarity of mind, the centeredness, and the patience cultivated through Tai Chi allowed me to act decisively, without rashness. Every step, every movement, every breath was intentional, guided by presence. The situation resolved safely because patience had trained me to respond, not react. In Tai Chi, patience is both a tool and a state of being. It teaches us to move with the rhythm of life rather than against it. It reminds us that every step, every breath, every gesture matters, and as we embrace this patience, we find that time itself becomes a companion, not an adversary, allowing growth, awareness, and energy to unfold naturally, like water carving a path through stone. Patience, in the end, is not about waiting, it is about moving fully, mindfully, and gracefully, with the quiet trust that the flow of life carries us where we need to go. Chapter 9. Harmony of Breath and Body. Breath is life, yet it is often overlooked. In Tai Chi, breath is the thread that weaves together body, mind, and spirit. Without it, movements feel disjointed, energy stagnates, and presence fades. With it, every posture, every transition, every step becomes alive, flowing, and centered. When I first learned to coordinate breath with movement, I noticed how shallow and irregular it had become in daily life. I was holding tension in my shoulders, gripping with my hands, moving without awareness, and the breath mirrored it. My grandmother often reminded me, the body follows the breath, the mind follows the body. At first, it seemed like a simple mantra, but through practice, I began to feel its depth. In forms, each movement is paired with inhalation or exhalation. Rising arms draw in energy with the breath. Lowering the torso releases tension and grounds you. Stepping forward or turning is guided by the rhythm of inhaling and exhaling. When I synchronized breath with motion, the entire sequence transformed. Movements felt lighter, more effortless. The subtle energy of Che began to circulate. I could sense it flowing from my feet, up through my legs, along the spine, and into the arms and hands. Push hands magnified this lesson. In that shared space of energy exchange, the breath became a communication tool. If I held my breath or became tense, my partner's movements disrupted my balance more easily. When I relaxed, inhaled and exhaled with awareness, I could feel their intention without force and respond with fluidity. Breath allowed me to remain centered even under pressure, to sense openings, and to act with clarity. There is a spiritual dimension to this as well. Breath is a bridge to the present moment. When we focus on inhaling and exhaling fully, the mind stops racing, thoughts settle, the body softens, the heart quiets. In this state, Tai Chi ceases to be just physical practice, it becomes meditation in motion. I have felt moments when the awareness of breath aligned every movement, every posture, every subtle shift of weight. In those moments, time seemed suspended, and I experienced a profound sense of harmony. Even in life outside the dojo, the lessons of breath remain. During stressful encounters, focusing on the rhythm of inhalation and exhalation helps restore presence. In challenging conversations, it fosters patience and clarity. When energy is chaotic, whether in the body or in circumstance, the breath becomes the anchor, bringing you back to center. Breath teaches surrender as well. We cannot force it. We cannot hold it indefinitely. We can only allow it to flow. And in that allowance, the body relaxes, energy moves, and awareness deepens. Tai Chi shows that strength and control do not come from tension or effort alone. They emerge from the harmony of breath and body working together. Through continued practice, I learned that every breath is a teacher. Every inhale invites openness. Every exhale releases resistance. The harmony of breath and body, the rhythm of Tai Chi, and, ultimately, it is the rhythm of life itself. When we move with this rhythm, we are not just performing a martial art, we are embodying presence, grace, and the quiet, enduring energy that flows through every living moment. Chapter 10. Integrating Tai Chi into life. Tai Chi does not end when you step off the mat. Its principles, cultivated through forms, push hands, rooting, and mindful breath, are not confined to the dojo. They are tools for living with clarity, balance, and presence in every moment. The art becomes a lens through which we view the world, a guide for moving through life with awareness rather than reaction. I have witnessed this integration firsthand. One of my instructors was a chef, another a plumber. At first, it seemed surprising that people in ordinary professions would possess such refined martial skill. Yet Tai Chi had trained them not only in movement, but in patience, perception, and adaptability. They carried the principles into daily life, responding calmly under pressure, listening deeply, and maintaining centeredness amidst chaos. This is the essence of Tai Chi beyond the dojo. It is a practice of living consciously. In my own experience, I have seen how Tai Chi principles extend into relationships, work, and personal challenges. Push hands teaches sensitivity and connection, which translates into better communication and empathy. Rooting teaches stability, helping us remain centered when life pulls us in different directions. Softness overcomes hardness, reminding us that flexibility, rather than force, often yields the most effective results. And mindfulness in motion trains the mind to remain present, reducing stress and increasing clarity in decision-making. Even in moments of danger, the lessons of Tai Chi proved their value. I recall an incident where someone's life was at risk. The calm awareness and sensitivity, cultivated through push hands and forms, allowed me to act decisively, with precision and presence, rather than reacting out of fear or tension. The art, practiced for years in quiet and patience, revealed its purpose in a single, critical moment. Integrating Tai Chi into daily life also means embracing its subtleties. It is not about perfection, or performing movements flawlessly in every situation. It is about cultivating a state of presence and awareness that flows into every interaction, every task, every decision. When walking, standing, or even speaking, we can carry the energy of mindfulness and rootedness. When faced with conflict, we can meet force with awareness rather than resistance. The ultimate teaching of Tai Chi is that life itself is a continuous flow of moments. Each day presents opportunities to practice presence, to listen, to yield, and to respond with clarity. The mat is a classroom, but the world is the true dojo. The patterns, the energy, the lessons we cultivate through practice are alive in every moment, guiding us toward harmony and centeredness. Through this integration, Tai Chi becomes more than a martial art. It becomes a way of being, a living meditation, a spiritual path. The practice nurtures patience, awareness, adaptability, and compassion. And as we carry it into our daily lives, we discover that each moment, ordinary or extraordinary, offers an opportunity to move, breathe, and live with presence, balance, and grace. The art of Tai Chi is not completed in a form, a sequence, or a moment of mastery. It is lived in every breath, every step, and every interaction, a lifelong journey of energy, awareness, and mindful living. Conclusion: Tai Chi as a path of spirit. Tai Chi is more than an art of movement. It is a path, a journey that unites body, mind, and spirit through awareness, patience, and flow. Each form, each posture, each practice of push hands is an invitation to return to presence, to align with the subtle energy that moves within and around us, and to discover strength not in force, but in harmony. Through years of practice, I have experienced how Tai Chi transforms more than the body. It cultivates patience, teaches the power of softness, and nurtures mindfulness in every action. It reminds us that life itself is a series of movements, some slow, some rapid, some unexpected, and that the quality of our response matters more than the outcome. I have applied these lessons not only on the mat, but in moments of real danger, in daily interactions, and even in observing the calm presence of my instructors, who were chefs, plumbers, and ordinary people, yet carried extraordinary awareness. The energy of Che, the flow of mind and body in harmony, teaches us a subtle but profound truth. True mastery is not external. It is not in perfect technique or recognition. It is in presence, clarity, and centeredness. It is in our ability to remain grounded amidst change, to move with awareness rather than react with tension, and to bring the lessons of practice into every aspect of life. Tai Chi invites us to embrace humility. There will always be moments of imbalance, distraction, and impatience, but the art does not demand perfection, it invites return. Each time we come back to the breath, to the form, to the quiet awareness that underlies every movement, we deepen our connection to ourselves and to the world around us. In that return, we cultivate resilience, compassion, and inner calm. The ultimate lesson of Tai Chi is that life is a continuous flow, and we are participants, not just observers. The movements on the mat are reflections of the movements of life. By practicing with intention, mindfulness, and sensitivity, we learn to navigate challenges with grace, to respond to conflict with calm, and to act from a place of balance and integrity. Tai Chi, seen through a spiritual lens, is a lifelong companion. It teaches us to move with purpose, to breathe with awareness, and to live with presence. Every posture, every step, every transition becomes an opportunity to cultivate harmony within ourselves and in our interaction with the world. Through this practice, the mat becomes a metaphor, the form becomes a meditation, and the flow of energy becomes a guide. The art offers a gentle but profound invitation to live consciously, to move gracefully, and to discover that true power arises not from strength alone, but from alignment, awareness, and the quiet energy of the spirit. Tai Chi is, in every sense, a path of the spirit, a journey of mindfulness, patience, and inner harmony that continues far beyond the form, far beyond the dojo, and into every moment of life.